Okay, so let's talk about the big stuff. New hospitals, better schools, all the critical infrastructure that makes our world work. But have you ever stopped to wonder how we actually pay for it all? We're going to dig into that because a new blueprint is out there that could honestly change everything.
So let's start super basic. How do we, as a community, actually fund these massive essential projects? I mean, where does the money for a brand new CT scanner or a fleet of school buses really come from?
For decades, the standard answer has been something called a public-private partnership, or a PPP. It's pretty much the default tool in the toolbox, where private companies step in to finance and build public projects. Sounds like a win-win, right?
But hold on a second. Here's the kicker. What if that default tool, that standard blueprint we've been using for years, what if it's fundamentally broken? What if, from the ground up, it was almost designed to fail? And that gets us right to the heart of the matter, the partnership problem. It turns out there is a long, well-documented history of these projects going sideways.
And look, we're not just talking about a few bad apples or projects that were poorly managed. The evidence shows a really clear pattern of structural failure. Again and again, PPPs are just plagued by massive cost blowouts, messy renegotiations, and services that fall apart. The problem isn't just in how they're run. It's in their actual architecture.
So why do they fail so often? Well, the core argument here is that the very design, the blueprint of a PPP, is flawed right from the start.
This slide really breaks down those core flaws. Fragility coupling basically means our local hospitals are at risk if Wall Street has a bad week. Temporal misalignment, that's just a fancy way of saying a 20-year profit plan doesn't really work for a hospital that needs to serve a community for 100 years. Embedded extraction, that's a big one. It means the system is literally built to funnel public money to private investors. And civic opacity, well, that just means it's almost impossible for us, the public, to see how much the stuff truly costs.
And this quote just nails it. The source material puts it perfectly. The failures aren't happening because of bad lawyers or lazy watchdogs. They're baked right into the DNA of the model. It's not the players, it's the game itself. All right, so if the old blueprint is broken, what's the alternative? Let's pivot and look at the solution, because we're talking about a completely different kind of architecture here. It's called the Charitable Asset Deployment Agreement, or CADA for short. To put it simply, it's a legal tool that lets a charity buy a big-ticket item, say an MRI machine, and then just deploy it for public use, all without the hospital having to take on a single dollar of debt. And the process is, well, it's beautifully simple. Step 1, a charitable foundation buys and owns an asset. They hold the title, full stop. Step 2, a public institution, like a hospital, gets to use that asset to do its job. And step 3, and this is the absolute game changer, the foundation bears all the financial risk. If anything goes wrong, the public is completely shielding. Okay, I know what you might be thinking. That sounds a little theoretical, right? So let's make it real. Let's look at a concrete example from the source material to see just how powerful this can be in action. So picture a local hospital that desperately needs a new CT scanner. With a typical PPP-style deal, they take on this huge debt on their books. The total cost is sky high because it's packed with interest and profit margins, and they get locked into some rigid long-term contract. Now compare that to the CADA, there is zero liability for the hospital. The total cost is way lower based on voluntary donations, and the hospital gets the critical equipment it needs with flexibility and might even get to own it down the road. It's a totally different world.
And the difference in cost? It is staggering. In the actual example from the source, the CDA model saved the public hospital $1.6 million. That's for the exact same scanner. Think about that. That's $1.6 million that can go directly into patient care instead of into private profits.
Now, if you're a little skeptical at this point, that's totally fair. I can hear you thinking, okay, is this all just some clever accounting trick to hide debt? It's a really important question. And the answer is a hard no. The CADA is legitimate because of a core accounting principle called substance over form. It works because the economic reality of the agreement is fundamentally different. It's not exploiting some loophole, it's a genuinely different kind of deal. Let's just quickly break down why it's not a sleeky lease. First off, the hospital's payments are truly voluntary. There is no legal contract forcing them to pay. Second, the hospital doesn't get substantially all the economic perks. The charity actually keeps things like the asset's final resale value. And third, the hospital doesn't have an absolute right to direct use. What they do with the machine has to align with the charity's public benefit mission. The economic substance isn't a loan, it's a gift. So what does this all mean when you step back and look at the big picture? The Akana isn't just some new financial gadget. It really represents an entirely new way of thinking. It's what you could call an architecture of hope. The source paper calls the CADA an existence proof. And I just love that phrase. It proves that a better, fairer, more efficient way to fund our public world isn't just a fantasy. It's not an academic theory anymore. It's real. It exists. And this right here is the mic drop. This isn't some proposal that needs a bunch of new laws passed. The CADA is buildable and usable right now, today, within the legal and charitable systems we already have. Which really leaves us with just one final, pretty urgent question. The blueprint exists. We have a better way to build our schools, our hospitals, and our future. So what are we waiting for?